Welcome to the Real Estate Show. From buying to selling and everything in between. Rochester's home for everything real estate. And now, your hosts from the Anthony Butera Team of Keller Williams Realty, Greater Rochester. It's Anthony Butera and Jason Mancuso.
Hey, everybody. Mark Meyer here, Anthony Butera, Jason Mancuso. Welcome to the Real Estate Show, episode 107. We are...
Good, Mark.
Yeah. Thanks. So what do we got? The Bills game. Is that Sunday?
Yeah,
Sunday, 6:40. And I can, well, you know what? I'm going. And that will be confirmed hopefully by the end of the day today, because in order to go, yesterday I had to overnight a COVID saliva test to a lab, and the lab actually disperses the tickets. So at this point, I'm more nervous about...
Or you have COVID.
Yeah, either I'm going...
We'll find out.
So you're talking about a lose-lose. Not only am I not going, I could have COVID. Which is going to be tough because, I mean...
So that's the one where you have to spit into that vial, but you're doing it over Zoom with a doctor, right?
So actually, yeah. So Mark, I heard of that, and yet it's not the case for this.
Oh, okay.
And to be honest with you, I assumed that that's what it would be, right? Because I mean, I could have gathered saliva from anybody, right?
Yeah.
I could have put a Whopper on Jason's desk and just put the test right up to his cheek, and that thing would have filled up.
And Jason would have got a free Whopper. That's a win-win.
Yeah, but the Whopper would have had onions or the saliva would have had onions and tomato.
Do a tested positive for onion breath.
Yeah.
So Bills are going to the Super Bowl.
Oh, gosh. Why would you
doing it, man? I'm going. I'm Bills money line. I am in. I think it's destiny.
Wow. No, I'd say it's destiny if by some miracle we win and face the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And the destiny is Tom Brady beating us for one last time when we thought the New England days were over with, right?
Yeah, and that's what, not to get ahead, but yeah, I hear you. That's the storyline. That's what's got me all screwed up for the Packers-Bucks game, too, because everybody's on the Packers, but then they're freaking Tommy. So,
yeah, I think Green Bay slaughters them personally, but you never know.
Yeah.
Slippery Tom.
Well, good luck to you, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, do you get to tailgate at all or anything like that? Or is it like out of your car into your seat?
All right.
You go, the stadium opens 2 hours before kickoff. But I don't think that anything's even open inside the stadium. I don't know. I'll find out. Going to Missouri.
I love it.
That's all I know. And it's further away on the map than I ever pictured before.
Yeah, it's out there.
Oh, man, I'm so dumb. I was thinking like it's in Buffalo, but it's not in Buffalo.
No.
You're like going.
Yeah, he's going.
You're going deep in the country.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I was going to bring Jason, but we would have got there and he would have gone for barbecue and not even made it to the game.
Some barbecue, actually.
I will. Of course I will. What else am I going to put in my pockets?
Nice. So what's going on in this market these days?
It's extremely, and this is what we wanted to talk about today, right? So my opinion it's changed so much time and time again the last couple of years at this point. In that, like I thought we hit a ceiling last year already, and I'm seeing a new ceiling, and I'm seeing it in the middle of January, or what is it, toward the third weekend of January, which isn't typical. I I am confident at this point that we're going to get 75% of homes in a 2.5, 3 month period. Our inventory is down to nothing. December was a record low inventory as far as data could ever be collected, as far as new homes hitting the market, okay? So, interest rates, again, all-time low, historical low. Desire to buy a home, all-time high. Consumer confidence, still all-time high. And we have nothing to sell them. And we're watching our values climb. And so the buyers that have to buy are buying. The ones that to wait, they're waiting. Although it's going to be, they're going to realize after once we have a rate adjustment, even if it was marginal at a 1 point adjustment, they're all going to wish that they overpaid with an interest rate of 3% or lower in the end, right? So the other compounding effects of this market are, and I'm seeing this with some listings that I put on the market in the last couple of weeks. Let me begin by saying that sure, we could be considered experts. We sell more homes than anybody in our area. And yet I'm going to say this, and I tell my sellers this. I have no idea what your home is worth. For anybody to tell you that they know what your home is worth is absolutely foolish. The purchases that are taking place today are not value-driven purchases. Today's purchases are emotional value purchases, and you can't quantify that. I can't bring you data to support that, and yet it's happening, okay? Yep. So as a seller, that's great, right? Unless you have to jump right back in that market. But even if you do have to jump back in that market, you're going to want to jump back in that market because that market has an interest rate of 3% or lower if you're pulling a mortgage, which 99% of the people are. Why wouldn't you right now with these interest rates, even if you had the cash to do so? Okay, so what I'm seeing, which has changed my mindset from just a few weeks ago, is that I'm watching houses sell today for more money than they will in April, May, and June. And you're probably thinking there's no way. That's the hottest point in the market. That's the hot spot. Historically, I absolutely agree with you. It is. Right now, the inventory has reached a level so low that anything hitting the market right now is getting an obnoxious amount of money and with great terms. If you're waiting at this point, you're waiting to leave money on the table. And I feel extremely confident in that statement. And Jason, I'll let you chime in because I've been rambling.
No, it was good stuff. I mean, I think, as you were saying all that, like it kind of got me back to my college days and taking an economics classes. And this is like very much like market-based capitalism, right?
Yeah.
In that, it almost feels like the housing inventory that's out there, it's like some new product that doesn't have an established price yet. And the demand and the supply aspects are playing out in front of our eyes. And that, goes to the point of like, we don't know what a house is worth. We can, establish an asking price and it's 9 times out of 10 that price is exceeded. So it's again, capitalism being, or an aspect of it being something's worth what a buyer's willing to pay for it.
Yep.
That's where we're at right now. And, as a buyer, like you've got to know that that's what you're up against. And the elements in play is that, there's even as strong as you feel about a particular property and making a strong offer, the odds are against you in terms of there not being anybody else who feels equal or even stronger. And we've got examples coming out of our ears of our team and even, just in the industry of hearing things of like, houses listed at 199,000 and, you've got a losing offer at 250 plus thousand, cash, no inspection. It leaves you to really scratch your head. But, I think, to the point you're making, Anthony, is that this is right now in the moment. This is not sustainable for even a short period of time, and certainly not for a long period of time. So it's all supply and demand, and right now the supply is so low that the demand is leading to these situations for these sellers. The assumption that Anthony's alluding to is that it's every season, every year has cyclical nature in terms of the seasonality to it. And there's just some, it's like an emotional, I don't know how to describe it. It's almost like a biological thing with human nature of the spring real estate market. And whether it's, it's snowing today, it seems like for the first time all winter, whether it's just the doom and gloom of the winter time, or the opposite effect of the birds chirping and the sun out more and warmer weather and people actually wanting to get out of their house in Western New York. But the spring market, it just feels like people come out of the woodwork on both sides, both sellers and buyers. So that's where the inventory is going to pick up. The only asterisk I would put to that in terms of, I guess, I hate to say hedging my bet on this conversation, but does COVID really have more of an impact than we're thinking it will this year? I guess in theory that could happen, but I'm willing to bet that we're going to experience the same spring market that Anthony alluded to, where there's it's going to feel like 75% of the actual transactions done across the board this year are done in about a 3-4 month period at most. It's crazy. You got to be in the right mind frame to handle it, and you got to look at this is where every person's going to be different. You mentioned like, the interest rates being so low, and even if you had cash as a buyer, why wouldn't you, type of thing. Well, that same example could be flipped to where, if a buyer in that position, say a buyer's got a house they're comfortable with, they have cash to buy their next home without a mortgage, and they're planning on never having a mortgage for the next home, then counterintuitive to what we've been preaching on for all these years now in terms of taking advantage of a low interest rate. In that example, you don't need a mortgage or you don't want one, then there's no point in really buying in this market because you are buying at the peak unless you absolutely have to. And in that event, it may make sense to kind of wait it out and see what how the pricing kind of adjusts or doesn't or plateaus or whatever, at least and again, I think where this market's going to play out in the next 12 to 24 months is the people that need to do something in the short term, and that that don't have a pile of cash to buy a new home. That's where we talk about this all the time, and I think it's such an important message that people understand. Very confident you will be kicking yourself if you don't figure out how to do something, or at least explore the options to see if it's realistic or not now in the next 12 months or so, compared to 3 to 5 years out. Just because the rate's going to go up, that is definitive. What pricing is going to do is less definitive. I'm willing to bet it's not going to totally drop off the map. I am willing to bet that there's going to be some corrections in play, but I don't think we're in a market where we're also going to lose all of the appreciation that we've gained by any means. So, what to do from here is kind of, it's tough to have just a broad conversation because it really comes down to the goals and needs of each individual person out there.
Yeah, and great points, right? Here's what I'm seeing now more than ever, right? Listen, we're New Yorkers. and it seems to be even amplified upstate, but our number one export's human beings. And I'm going on a lot of listing appointments now, and the ones that seem the most motivated right, the current real-time market conditions are the people that are leaving the state. And I got to tell you, there is a tone, like I refuse to get into politics, but there is a tone from people that I'm meeting with that they have to get the hell out of New York. And it's no longer weather motivated or the cold winters. It's for other reasons. The income taxes, the property taxes, and that's always been a thing. It's even more of a thing now than ever before. And it's interesting too, to play off of that. Those conversations were always moving to Florida, right? And it's like every time I go to Florida, I run into more people I know there than I do at. So now it's a lot of getting a lot of Tennessee. Had one couple this week actually moving to Alabama, and then another one Virginia. So people are leaving the state of New York, and I say that because this market is going to, I can't predict when it's going to shift. It's going to stabilize soon. And when I say soon, I'll give a range of 2 to 5 years where it's going to stabilize and shift in that time period, actually, because what's happening is people are going to be leaving New York State at a more rapid pace than they did in the past. And the boomers are going to have to sell their homes as they age out and end up in whatever it may be, 55 plus communities or assisted living, independent living, whatever that is. We're going to see a lot of that all happening at once. And all of a sudden our market's going to flip. And it's going to look like it looked when you and I got in the business, Jason, and we couldn't give a house away. And it wasn't a shocker when your house was on the market for 6 months to a year. Like, it was taking that long to sell in many cases. And
now, important to note there too, like, I think that the size of the pie is going to reduce at that point. Like, that, it's not going to shift or flip because there's that many homes coming available for sale in comparison to now. There's going to be, even less homes available for sale because we live in a market, like, where are these homes coming from?
Yeah.
It's not like they're building neighborhoods at mass. And, at that point, the demand is going to shift more than anything because of the rate. Again, to beat a dead horse. There's just going to be that many fewer buyers out there that causes the shift.
Yeah.
Causes the notion to where, as an example, there's 10 buyers for every one home right now. There'll be 10 homes for every one buyer, but there'll be substantially less buyers as a whole. We're not worried about from our profession, but it's just, there's interesting times ahead. And that's why, again, back to the needs and the necessities or the desires of the consumer out there, you got to have goals, and you got to make sure that your goals align for, the future ahead. And what I mean by that is, like, if if you're in the example where you're, kind of in a starter home, 2-bedroom or say a 3-bedroom home with only 1 bathroom, and you've already got 2 kids and you got 1 on the way, you own a home, so that's a good situation. It doesn't mean like you can't get by. I mean, keep in mind, I guess simpler times when it feels like all of our grandparents grew up with 15 kids in 1 3-bedroom house, right?
Yeah.
This day and age, like, most people want to move on up from that. So if you're in that situation where you're gonna, quote unquote, outgrow your home, I guess you're gonna want to suck it up and kind of deal with the higher pricing if you feel like that's the case now, to take advantage of that rate.
Yep. It's things are getting really interesting. We've seen so many different things in the last couple of years There's been more things we've had to adapt to in the last 2 years than we had to in the 8 years prior, right? I mean, everything is so much different. I mean, our contract compliances are completely different. Our strategies are completely different. The market conditions have COVID, like we've had to adapt so much.
Even outside of COVID.
Yeah.
Even leading up to COVID, that point was relevant, and then it just went on steroids last year. So
yeah, it's crazy. And like I said, this isn't a political statement. There's a tone right now in our country that is like nothing I've ever seen before, where people are either they've never been happier or they've just reached a breaking point and they're leaving. A lot of people are leaving. I've had a listing I sold this week, and it was the second time I've had this conversation the last few weeks, both being in law enforcement, where local law enforcement, they would stay on forever. They would push out their retirement, and now they're getting their 20 years in and they're bailing. And those were two people just this week. And I get it, right? I think everyone's crazy for getting into to law enforcement, but now more than ever, you're under a constant microscope for many good reasons, and yet it's got to be very difficult. So there's just things are changing. It's the reasons people selling are changing, and the values of our market has changed too. We do have an influx of people that want to be here, that want to live here because of what's happened with COVID. The desire to live in the big cities has changed. Right now, Rochester looks pretty sexy. We kind of got we have the rural and the city feel, or we have a menu for whatever you're looking for. You know,
no, that's a good point.
And our values, though, I don't want anyone to think that like next year these values are going to go back down to where they were 3 years ago. We were so overdue for inflation. Yeah. It's craziness, right?
Yeah, and that's the ultimate point, right? Or at least that's the ultimate thing that we feel confident in, is that you're not going to lose your ass if you do something now.
Sure.
The conversation remains the same no matter what market condition is that if you buy a home and you have to sell it 2 years later, that's not a great position to be in. If you're in that position now in 2021, where you bought 2 years ago in 2019, you're in a freaking great spot. And that's pretty much unheard of for the way that economic cycles go, at least with the housing market. So, I mean, I think to tie it all together and put a bow on, figuratively, in terms of making this look good, this kind of, it's almost, the tone of it's a little grim, this conversation that we've had. I really don't think it's meant to be that. I think the reality of what we're dealing with in the moment right now can certainly be perceived that way. But, all that really matters is, as a consumer, as a buyer, as a seller, as an investor, is that you have goals to meet and you have needs to meet. And you just set the game plan to do that. This isn't about us telling you, hey, you better take advantage of a low interest rate and having it not make sense at all in terms of your life situation, call it for, an outlook for the next 5 years. I get it. There's unpredictability to that time frame, but I think it's more so if you're in a predictable situation in terms of life, then set the game plan forward for, again, the industry that we're in terms of the basic human need of having to have a roof over your head. And that's where the sense of urgency comes in, that has created the market that we're in terms of so many people wanting to take advantage of the situation and having that foresight to get crazy with these offers that they're making as a buyer and advantageous for a seller. Overall, Rochester's not falling off the map, even with the points of the exports of people that we do have. We're not going to go anywhere. We have a stable economy, thank God. And overall, the market here remains stable. It's just a matter of aligning your needs and then wants to figure out if it makes sense to do something now or not, and in the short term. And if it does, if it does make sense, I think the message is get off your ass and do it now sooner than later, because we feel very confident you're going to kick yourself if you wait too long.
Dude, you guys are just explaining my situation this whole time, and I feel really attacked. 3 kids, you got 3 bedrooms, goats in the backyard.
So you even talk about goats, dude.
Yeah. Oh, okay. That's just what I heard. Feel really attacked.
And again, I guess it's like the example I brought up in terms of I know grandparents' generation, poor us, right? Oh, you got a 3-bedroom house with a couple bedrooms and a bunch of kids.
Yeah. Well,
people are sleeping in the attic and on the floor back in those days. So
let me say this about this market that we're in right now. This is one of these unique markets where there's no victims. Some are feeling like victims as buyers right now, but if you're not looking to sell, look what has happened to your home value. You have equity that you've never seen before without changing anything that you've done. You haven't made extra payments. You have this, and I used to think it was false equity. Now it's real equity. Our values have gone up $18,000 in just the last 12 months in our area. That's a real thing, right? That is, it's made for a fruitful economy, because if you desperately needed money, you have that money there. You could pull money out of your house. You could pull a home equity line of credit. Now, I'm not, your financial advisor is not going to tell you to do that. And yet, the rates are really low. So you have that option. And for a lot of people that are never planning on leaving because of what has just happened in our market, you can go and get an $18,000 kitchen without changing anything. And you're still in the same position if you borrowed against the house, right? With that logic. So
it's key too. And another point to that is $18,000 is substantial in this market, because that can be 10+% or around there in terms of a jump. $18,000 in Manhattan, who cares? This is all relevant to our original price points really in this market. I think that's the driving force behind our confidence too, is because just call it, I've said before, call it this region, like Cleveland to Albany, just up and down the thruway. It's been so freaking cheap for so long that, in comparison to similar markets across the country, or even bigger markets across the country, we're a sliver of what the cost is to own a home here, compared to Boston or outside of it, or the, New York and the tri-state area, etc. So we had to, things have evolved enough to where you can't just have a $125,000 house in the suburbs anymore. Period.
Well,
you can.
I don't think it's going to drop back down to that.
Yeah. You can, but it's going to need a lot of work at this point.
Sure.
You can check out AnthonyButeraTeam.com. You can subscribe to the podcast, get in contact with Jason or Anthony. And I mean, it's always good just to talk to somebody if you're even thinking about it, and then you can walk everybody through benefits, negatives, all that good stuff.
That's a great point, Mark, and not to have this go longer, but that's how we run our business. We're not here to, stick a for sale sign in your yard like a used car salesman against your will. It's all about aligning the goals and here's the options to make it happen. So,
yep.
All right, cool. So subscribe to the podcast and
go Bills.
Yeah, and we'll see you next time.
See you.
Thanks for listening to The Real Estate Show. Find us on Facebook, iTunes, Stitcher, and YouTube. If you're looking to sell or buy, talk to the Anthony Butera Team of Keller Williams Realty, Greater Rochester. Visit AnthonyButeraTeam.com.